Hello and welcome to Cahnmann's Current Events Roundtable. Today we will meet a diverse, accomplished, and educated women from our Illinois public school system. Their voices truly matter on their views of our teaching practices, our education policies, and for better teacher qualities. Their aim is to support both schools and students to develop. Today we will be talking about Waiting for Superman, that is the new film about the public school system in the United States, 2 million minutes, how students in the U.S. compares to students in China and in India, and the school system, of course, in Finland. And we are going to introduce our panel today. I think it's a very important program, and I need, hopefully, that everybody will be listening in, and hopefully, ladies, we were going to be solving the school system and how it needs to be fixed. Okay, I would like to introduce first the lady on my left, and this is Dr. Constance Collins. Welcome, Dr. Collins. And we'll call you Connie. She's superintendent of the Round Lake Area District, School District 116. And the lady on my right is Rudy Luboff. Is that Luboff? Luboff, that's right. Former principal of the Chicago Public School System. I'd like to introduce Sylvia Sanders, who's a reading specialist teacher of the North Shore Schools. Welcome, Sylvia. And last but not least, and I think this shows a little nepotism, because if you notice, her name is Katie Cahnmann, same name as the moderator, but she's one of our daughters, and she's a social support coordinator for the ACE Technical Charter Schools. Welcome, Katie. I'm glad you could finally make one of our programs. What we're going to be talking about today is it's a very, very interesting topic, because we need to get ourselves, we need to see and realize that we're investing in teachers training, and it's not optional. We need to find out what it is that we need to do to help the children, and that's why our ladies are here, to help children, where it's not about us, it's about the children, and why and what's going on in the Chicago, not only the Chicago public schools, but the school system in the United States. I know you know more about what's going on in Chicago, and we need to talk about that too, but it also concerns every one of our students in the United States. And just recently we were talking about the school system, and one of the things that the film that just came out by Davis Guggenheim, and he started this movie, he introduced the movie Waiting for Superman. And I think we need to talk about this first, because I think this is what is very important, because you remember the movie Inconvenient Truth was to the environment as Waiting for Superman is to the educational system. Ladies, we need to talk about what is really happening in the school system. And I'd like to, first of all, while we have different types of schools, Katie, maybe you can explain to us, we hear a lot about the charter school system, and you know, what's going on with the charter school system, and in Waiting for Superman, that shows that that's a wonderful school system, because a lot of our public school systems are failing, and the charter schools seem to be taking off. What is a charter school system? What is a charter school?
A charter school is a public school. However, it typically focuses on a specific area, typically smaller than a public school. And I think the biggest thing about a charter school is that it gives opportunity in the public school system. Typically, students, when they're getting ready to go to school, will attend their neighborhood schools, and that's the only option. Charter schools were created to give more option to families and the students of where they could go to school. If they wanted a smaller school, if they wanted to focus on a certain area of study. A lot of them are technological schools, and they are not fully funded by the state. So they are partially funded, but they also have to raise a lot of the funding, and they have to be approved as well. So they're autonomous in a way, but they have to follow some of the same rules that public schools do. And they have to have their charter renewed every 3 to 5 years, typically.
And how do you get into one of these charter schools?
There's not selective enrollment. You just have to apply. There's an application that you have to fill out, And basically it's based on numbers. So if you really want to get into a school, you have to apply early on.
When in Waiting for Superman, we were watching that film together, and I remember watching it with you, Sylvia, and it was heartbreaking because some of the schools, if you want to get into a good school system, you have to go through a lottery. And what was that all about? What is the lottery
Well,
about?
it seems to be that there's a lottery for the students, and they have to wait until their numbers are called. And it's very sad because you see children waiting for a particular school, and they sit there and wait and wait and wait to see if their number is called. And I had, my heart broke for several of the children who weren't called because their numbers weren't called. And that's a sad number, really sad state of affairs.
I don't understand. Why can't we find a good school system for every child? What, you know, Connie or Rudy?
Suzanne, you had said a charter school system. Well, it's not really a system. It's a typically charter schools are more independent schools that have been started by an entrepreneur or a group of people who want to concentrate on a certain idea or concept that they have. So it's not like a city's or a town's public school system. And that's part of it's also part of the difference, is that each one has, there are groups of charter schools, and as many as 20, or even I think there's as many even as 50 sometimes nationally in that same group, but they are not a system.
Okay, but what's the difference on a magnet school? Maybe our viewers want to know. We often hear of magnet schools, charter schools, public schools. There's so many different school systems that we say school systems, but it's not a system. But what is a magnet?
Well, a magnet school, generally, it's used differently in different places. So it's also hard to give a definition that's the same in every single place. But generally, a magnet school is part of a public school system, and it's a school. It's a school that's taken on often a separate or special theme or area of study, and it and typically people have to write an application to go into it.
Right, magnet schools are more often selective enrollment, so there's a little more competition getting into the school, but they do follow the same laws as the public schools. They're under the same local government, funded the same, zero enrollment fee.
Right. A charter school will have a charter that comes from the state.
You know, this is kind of confusing for all of us that are watching today. I don't understand, why are we having all these different, why can't we find a school that's good for every child? Connie, why don't you know, you're superintendent of schools, and you know, why do we have to have a charter school? Why do we have to have a magnet school? Why aren't all these schools, you know, like in Finland, for Finland, all the schools in Finland, they get the same education. Every student that goes into a Finland school, that's why Finland, by the way, is #1, and I think we're number 23, which is very, very sad. But I don't understand. Why do kids have to go into a charter or magnet? Why aren't all the schools the same?
Well, you know, that's a great question, because it should be that every child receives a quality education. It shouldn't matter what school a child is in. We talk about our traditional public schools. We know that charter schools are also public schools, but non-traditional compared to what we're accustomed to. When we see that children are not being successful in a typical or a traditional setting, then we tend to look to see where else can we find the answer. And I do know that charter schools are not always the answer, because there are some charter schools, just as there are some traditional public schools that are successful, and some which are not successfully educating kids. So I think we have to keep looking. We need to get it right. As you talked about in Finland, we know that they have a homogeneous population. We know that children are excelling there. When we take a look at a lot of our children, when they're taking some tests, which are international tests, our children aren't doing as well in this country. And we have to ask ourselves why. So what is it? And I believe that there's not just one answer. I think there are a lot of components to the answer, and so I think that we can sort of break that down and talk about what contributes to the success of children in school and what really inhibits
well,
their
why don't
success.
we take that question? What do you see contributes to success in children, and why not all children are getting the same kind of education? Is it the teachers? Is it the children? What is it?
Well, piggybacking on what Connie said, the tradition in the United States is entrepreneurial and is also very independent sometimes from the government. So we've evolved a system, a state-based system, where education is first of all, mostly funded by the state, but Americans like a lot of choice because of our history and our background. And so you had asked the question, why do you think there are so many different choices? Why can't there just be one school, as in Finland, where they're offering a similar curriculum and where teachers are trained more or less in the same way? We have a very different tradition. We have a tradition of choice, and especially now when some of the public schools are being viewed as not being offering enough of that choice to people. In America, we like to have choice. So that's been part of the evolution
but
of
look
this.
what happens to choice. I mean, that sounds really nice, Rudy, but what's going on? You said that Finland, all the schools, everybody learns the same school, they're the same program, right? Everybody, like all the fifth graders, every school, probably in fifth grade, has the same program. Everybody in the sixth grade has the same program.
Well, they have more of a common curriculum.
Right, but somehow that is being successful. That somehow, we're talking about choices and diversity, but somehow that is that's coming out successful.
You know, I think we have to take a
Why?
look at, Suzanne, what can we learn from what's going on in Finland? The way everything is set up in Finland is not the way it's set up in this country. They have a pretty much homogeneous population. We have a lot of diversity in this country. They do not have the immigrants or the number of immigrants that we have within this country. We know when we reflect on and take a look at what our nation looked like many years ago and the changes that have taken place today, and even the changes that are projected for the future, we're going to look a lot different moving forward into the future. We know that we're going to be primarily Latino, and so how are we adjusting to the change? What is it that we're doing? How do we need to do some things differently? You know, it's also been said that in this country that we are teaching for the 20th century rather than teaching for the 21st century. And in a lot of the countries that are very progressive and moving forward,
they're teaching for the 21st
that's right, whether it's
century,
China,
right,
India, or
right.
Finland. And so really to prepare a workforce to be successful as we move forward and to really understand what is it that you know, the business world is looking for, we've got to start really paying more attention to that and preparing students for that world.
Well, the business world is looking for engineering, they're looking for math, they're looking for science, and that's where our students are really falling down. We get very low numbers on the children that are learning math and science, and that's why some of our companies, our corporations, are going to these countries. They're going to India and China because they got the best people that can do the job, and our people are failing. Now, and you're, Katie, in ACE. ACE is a technical school.
Yes.
And one thing about Finland, you know, we'll get back to because they, you know, they have 20 universities, and remember that's government pays for this. But one thing that I understand about Finland, they also have universities that are technical universities too, and they don't look down upon them. Like for some reason in our country, it used to be that, oh, you know, you're going to, you know, the name college, you're going to Yale, you're going to Princeton, you're going to Harvard, you're going to Stanford, you're going to University of Chicago, Northwestern, what you know, University of Illinois, and all these different schools. But they don't stress that. They stress universities, but they also are really stressing technicals, and that's what your school is all about.
Yes, it is. I think there's a lot of factors. I think